You mentioned Josephine. We have to talk about her.
Mm,
I
mm.
understand we actually have quite a lot of private letters Napoleon wrote to her, less the other way around, because people say that she wasn't as smitten as he was. But there's still a lot of speculation about their relationship. And the story that's usually told is that she was the older, more experienced sort of femme
Hmm.
fatale and who wrapped this poor, smitten little man around her fingers. But what do we actually really know about their relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I always sort of see Napoleon at the beginning as this kind of like the awkward man, slightly geeky guy in the party, sort of brooding in the corner, and the high society,
Existentialist,
the
in a
the, the
way, or
social, yeah,
right.
and the socializers kind of, maybe sort of laughing at this slightly geeky character who sort of is a bit awkward, and Josephine is not like that. She's the kind of like very much the inset.
The
in
soul
in
of the
this sort of,
party.
yeah, and I think it's. I mean, of course, paintings are going to be kind of very flattering, and I think she does have a bit of a tooth decay issue, which is maybe partly from her kind of heritage. She was born in the Caribbean, and I think one of the things she probably would have done is to kind of like suck on kind of sugar,
Sugar.
and
Yeah.
and that, and that sort of rots her teeth away. So yeah, I don't know how you do that if you're making a film. You'd have to get somebody to to kind of produce that kind of effect, I suppose. Um, so I suppose what I'm saying is, yeah, I think a lot of it is not necessarily her beauty, but her charm. And one maybe thinks of what has been written about Cleopatra. It's not necessarily that it's a physical beauty which men find attractive, but that kind of charm. And again, it's a kind of form of charisma, isn't it? Something which is difficult exactly to define, but you kind of know it when you see it, sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, he needs probably her more than she needs him initially. But she eases him into a career which very rapidly takes off. So I think that sort of power dynamic between the couple obviously changes. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear that she is unfaithful to him, but mind you, he's not completely faithful to her. But I guess the social attitudes of the time was that it's probably okay for the man to be unfaithful more than for the woman to be
Right.
unfaithful. Um, I think she's a traumatized individual. I would say post-traumatic stress disorder. After all, she's been in effect on death row. She's seen her husband guillotined. She's barely
During the
survived this
revolution. Right.
during the revolution, and I think that, to an extent, comes across in the film in Ridley Scott, and that's one of the better parts of it. I think it shows where she is coming from. And you've got this group of people, Josephine is amongst them, who can say, we've survived. We're going to live life to the full now, because there's no point really holding back, because do it while you can kind of attitude, which you get in that sort of directory, that regime which where she's a leading social figure, but it's a regime which also has a reputation for being a little bit decadent and being perhaps promiscuous and too open, I guess, when it comes to kind of sexual politics. And this is where I think Adam Zamoyski's point about Napoleon being a bit of a prude. The Napoleonic regime, to an extent, tries to clamp down a little bit on some of that. It's for another older historical analogy, you think of Augustan Rome,
Emperor Augustus.
Augustus.
Right. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't want this regime to look kind of promiscuous, scandal. They are ones, but they're kind of, he tries to minimize it, or hush it up or whatever. We know what happens to regimes, I guess, which get that kind of stigma of being kind of both corrupt financially but also morally. It can be politically very damaging, and history's littered with examples of regimes which to an extent collapse because of public perceptions like that.
How much power did Josephine wield as the empress, if
uh,
any?
she does have a degree of power, and we think of Napoleonic France as being this incredibly modern bureaucratic state, where appointments to senior positions is just about how good you are professionally. But yeah, I mean, she does wield a degree of influence when it comes to appointments, and you might talk about a sort of Beauharnais clan. So it becomes a little bit factionalized, elite kind of court politics in Napoleonic France, and so if you're a prefect and you've got a kind of link with the empress or with her ladies in waiting or something like that, that gives you a little bit of a kind of an advantage, all other things being equal. But she's not going to have a voice in kind of grand strategy. Do we march on Austria, or do we attack Russia at this point, or anything like that? How do we defeat Britain? She's not going to get a voice there. I think something one has to remember is that in the late 18th century, you start to get a very negative view emerging in France and maybe further afield about women being involved in politics. And a lot of this is what Marie Antoinette becomes a victim of, that real sentiment that she is sort of manipulating things behind the scenes, manipulating her husband, Louis XVI, who is a weak ruler and allows himself to be dominated by his wife. And this becomes a kind of trope. It produces a lot of pamphlets about why you shouldn't have women in politics, and you get these sort of interesting publications, you might say bizarre, misogynist, saying a history of all the women in political leadership positions since Messalina of ancient Rome, and then they kind of have all these horrible women like Catherine de Medici and that, and there's poisoners and manipulative kind of figures. So Napoleon again he's a political animal, so I think he knows what it would do to his regime. To if it's clear that he's being bossed around by his wife on policy issues, that would be a kind of catastrophic image to present in this period. But also, he's not, I guess, psychologically, he's not the kind of type of person that's going to be sort of bossed around by anyone. So certainly not when it comes to high politics.
How did she take the fact that Napoleon had to remarry and that she lost her status as the empress?
Yeah, I mean, I think she doesn't take it very well, as you can guess, and so there's this terrible scene where they go through the divorce, and I think she faints at one point, and it's really a very unpleasant, painful kind of process. I mean, beyond the actual divorce itself, which is the blow, she does, she's not thrown out onto the street or anything. She gets a very big pension and a palace, probably more than one palace, and she retains her title, and you almost get a sense it's going to be more of a problem for the new empress, and that you've got this kind of ex-empress or still empress kind of like lurking there on the outskirts of Paris, who Napoleon, still has a bond with. How's that going to kind of work? It's a little bit awkward. I don't know if it's unprecedented, but history's so long and diverse, you tend to get precedents for anything. But I'm not sure if there is one for that. How do you manage that? I mean, Henry VIII, I guess I suppose no, that isn't really a precedent, is it? Maybe with Catherine of Aragon it is. But, she's just shunted into the background in a very brutal way. Napoleon doesn't behave that way to Joséphine. There is that bond, I think, of respect and affection, which continues.
Oi! Thank you for listening to the episode. If you've enjoyed it, please subscribe and follow on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. As always, eternal glory and gratitude to my producers who are supporting this show on Patreon, the kings and queens, Gordon, Jurechuk, Lorenzo, Veronica, Mila, Carmen, and Taichi. Without you, this pod would not have been possible at all. If you'd like to become a certified Tovarish or Tovarishica of the show too, head to Patreon, find Smart Cookies podcast on there, and become one. It's as simple as that. Thank you.